The night was cold, darker than usual, and the neon signs of the alien colony city blinked weakly in the fog. Humans and aliens walked quickly across the crowded streets, each one trying to find warmth, food, or safety before midnight. The air was filled with the smell of smoke, old metal, and damp stone. Among the moving crowd was a human traveler named Daniel. He had just finished a long day of work, his jacket torn from the sharp winds. He only wanted to return to his small rented room and rest. But fate had other plans for him that night. From the corner of the street, a small figure stepped forward. She was young, with alien features both strange and beautiful. Her eyes glowed faintly, her skin pale like the silver moon. She held something tightly in her hands. It was only 2 wrinkled credits, worth almost nothing in a city where even cheap shelter cost more. She looked at Daniel with trembling lips. "Please, human," she whispered, her voice weak. "I only have 2 credits. Let me sleep in a warm bed tonight." Daniel froze. His first thought was to walk away. This city was full of tricks, thieves, and broken promises. Why would a stranger, an alien girl, come to him for help? He looked around. People were staring, but nobody cared. Everyone walked past as if she did not exist. The girl's shoulders shook from the cold. Her thin cloak barely covered her. Her eyes begged for mercy, not money. Daniel felt something inside him twist. He remembered the harsh streets of his own childhood, the nights when hunger and cold were his only companions. Still, he hesitated. "Why me?" he asked, his tone half curious, half defensive. He wanted to push her away, yet he couldn't. The girl lowered her head. "Because you looked at me," she answered softly. Her words carried weight, as simple as they were. They cut through the noise of the city. Daniel's heart beat faster. He knew the city was dangerous. He knew strangers often carried hidden traps. But something about her voice felt real, authentic. She did not ask for riches, food or weapons, only for warmth, only for a bed to survive the night. He looked at the 2 credits in her small hands. The paper was wrinkled, almost torn. It was nothing. Worthless to him, but to her it was hope. "Where are your parents?" Daniel asked quietly. His eyes scanned the shadows. Maybe someone was watching. Maybe this was a setup. "I don't have them anymore," the girl whispered. Her eyes glistened. She didn't cry, but the silence in her words was heavier than tears. Daniel felt a chill, not from the cold wind, but from the truth behind her tone. He wanted to believe it was a lie, yet her eyes told him otherwise. Before he could answer, a loud crash echoed from the far side of the street. A group of rough-looking men walked by, their eyes scanning the area like predators. The girl instantly hid behind Daniel, her body stiff, her breath shallow. Daniel frowned. "Do they know you?" he asked quickly. She only nodded, fear glowing in her strange eyes. The men walked past, but one of them looked in Daniel's direction for a moment too long. His gaze was sharp, suspicious, then slowly, they disappeared into the next alley. Daniel felt his jaw tighten. He realized this was not just a homeless child. She was being hunted. The girl clutched his sleeve. "Please," she begged again. "I can't stay outside. If they find me, I won't survive." The night seemed darker now. The city lights looked weaker. Daniel's choice pressed heavy on him. He had 2 paths: walk away and forget her, or step into a storm that could swallow him whole. For a moment, Daniel closed his eyes. He told himself he was just a worker, just a man with no power, but his heart burned with something stronger. He remembered his sister, long gone. He remembered how he once wished someone would help, someone would care. When he opened his eyes, the girl was still staring at him, her 2 credits trembling in her hands, her body shaking in the cold. The city's noise faded. For Daniel, only one question remained. Would he walk away like everyone else? Or would he answer the desperate plea of a girl who had nothing but hope? And in that silence, the suspense grew. The night deepened and the streets grew colder. The alien city was never kind after sundown. Shadows stretched long across the broken pavement, and the lights above flickered as if tired of fighting the darkness. The voices of merchants and travelers faded, leaving only the hollow sound of footsteps and the distant hum of machines. Daniel walked slowly, the girl close behind him. He hadn't answered her yet, not fully. He told himself he was only walking, thinking, searching for reason. But his steps kept carrying her along, as if his body already knew the choice his mind refused to make. The girl hugged herself tightly. Her cloak was thin, the fabric torn, and every gust of wind made her shiver. She kept looking behind them, scanning the corners. The way her eyes darted made Daniel uneasy. It was clear She was hiding from something or someone. Daniel spoke at last, his voice low. You can't survive here. Not with only 2 credits, she nodded quietly. I know, she whispered, but I hoped someone would let me sleep inside even for a night. Daniel sighed. His own pockets weren't heavy. He had enough for food. Enough for his rent, nothing extra. Yet when he looked at her, thin and fragile against the storm of the city, the thought of ignoring her twisted his stomach. They passed a row of broken stalls abandoned long ago. The smell of burnt oil and rust filled the air. A group of aliens sat near a fire, their faces hidden. They laughed cruelly as Daniel and the girl walked by. Their laughter echoed too long, like a warning. The girl pressed closer to him. This city eats the weak, she murmured, as if speaking to herself. Daniel glanced at her, wanting to ask more. But her silence was heavy. He noticed the scars on her hands, small but sharp. They told a story of struggle, of survival, of someone far younger than her eyes suggested. He stopped near a flickering lamp. The cold was biting through his jacket. Tell me your name, he said. The girl hesitated. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Finally, she whispered. Lyra. Daniel repeated it softly. Lyra. The name felt strange, delicate, like a secret that should have stayed hidden. Lyra looked at him with uncertain eyes. Why are you still here? She asked. You could walk away like the others. Daniel didn't answer. Not yet. He kept walking, and she followed. The streets narrowed, tall walls rising on either side. The air grew heavier, filled with steam from underground vents. Lyra's steps slowed. She looked around nervously. This place is not safe at night, she whispered. Daniel frowned. Where would you go if I left you? Her eyes fell to the ground. Back to the alleys. Under the pipes, she said quietly. But they search there too. Daniel felt anger spark inside him. Not at her, but at the world that forced a child to think this way. He remembered his own cold nights on Earth, sleeping under iron bridges, praying no one would find him. And now here in this alien city, history was repeating, just with a different child, a different world. A sudden sound broke his thoughts. A bottle shattered across the pavement ahead. From the shadows, 2 men stepped out, not the same ones from before. But their faces wore the same cruel hunger. Lost, are you? One of them sneered. His eyes scanned Daniel first, then lingered on Lyra. Lyra's body stiffened. She grabbed Daniel's sleeve. Her voice was barely a breath. Please. Keep walking. Daniel's jaw tightened. He guided her forward, not answering the men. His heart thumped hard. He could feel her fear like a second heartbeat against his own. The men followed a few steps, but then stopped. Their whispers carried in the cold air. Daniel didn't catch the words. But he caught the tone, greedy, dangerous. When they were finally out of sight, Lyra exhaled sharply. Her hands trembled. Daniel looked at her. They're hunting you, aren't they? She froze. Then slowly she nodded, her voice cracked. They won't stop, not until... She stopped herself. Daniel didn't push. He only knew one thing. If he left her now, she wouldn't see the morning. They reached an open square. The lamps here were brighter, but the ground was empty. Lyra sat down on a broken stone step, exhaustion on her face. She held out the 2 credits again, her small hands shaking. Take it, please. Just help me sleep safe tonight. Daniel looked at the torn paper in her palm. His chest felt heavy. This wasn't about money. It was about something deeper. He knew it. She knew it. For a moment, silence ruled. Only the cold wind spoke. Daniel stood there, fighting with himself. Behind them, somewhere in the maze of streets, footsteps echoed faintly. Growing closer, Lyra's eyes widened. Fear returned to her face. They're coming, she whispered. Daniel looked at her, then at the shadows. His decision could no longer wait. The footsteps grew louder in the distance, echoing through the narrow alleys like the sound of a predator closing in. Daniel pulled Lyra to her feet quickly, his eyes scanning for a path that would lead them away from danger. The cold streets were empty but alive with hidden eyes. Every shadow seemed ready to swallow them. Lyra gripped his sleeve, her voice trembling. They won't stop. They always follow. Daniel's chest tightened. He had no reason to trust her, no reason to put his life at risk, yet he couldn't shake the memory of her desperate plea, the way her small hands trembled as she held out those worthless 2 credits. She was too young, too fragile to be left to the wolves of this city. Stay close, Daniel muttered. He led her quickly through side alleys until the footsteps faded. When they finally stopped under the dim glow of a broken street lamp, Lyra's breathing was heavy. Her eyes wide with fear, Daniel studied her. There were too many questions. Who were these men chasing her? Why was she on the streets? What truth was she hiding? Still, he asked none of them. Instead, he asked himself a single question. What now? Lyra lowered her head. I don't need much, she whispered. Just a bed for one night. I can leave in the morning. Daniel shook his head. 2 credits won't buy you safety, he said firmly. Not here, not anywhere. Her shoulders sagged, and for the first time she looked ready to give up. It hurt Daniel more than he expected. Her silence reminded him of a child lost in a storm. Too tired to fight, he sighed deeply. The choice pressed hard on him. He could walk away and never see her again. But his heart refused to let him. He had lived that life alone, abandoned, praying for someone to care. He could not do to her what others once did to him. Finally, he spoke. I can't take your money. His voice was steady now, but if you trust me, you can come with me. Lyra's head snapped up. Her glowing eyes widened in shock. With you? She asked, almost as if the words were dangerous. Daniel nodded slowly. My place isn't much, he admitted. Small, messy. Not what you'd expect, but it's warm and no one will find you there. For a moment, she stared at him as if he had spoken a language she did not understand. Trust was not something she had seen often, especially not from a stranger. Her hands curled into fists, as if she was torn between hope and suspicion. Why? She whispered, her voice small. Why would you help me? Daniel looked away, his throat tightened. He thought of his younger sister, the one he lost years ago, the one he never got the chance to protect. Because no one else will, he said simply. Lyra bit her lip. Her eyes shimmered as if she wanted to believe him, but fear kept her chained. If this is a trick, she warned softly. It's not, Daniel said firmly. His tone left no room for doubt. The silence between them stretched. The city around them seemed to listen, waiting for her answer. Finally, Lyra nodded. It was a small nod, uncertain but real. Okay, she whispered. I'll trust you. Daniel felt the weight of her choice fall onto his shoulders. It was no longer just his life he carried, but hers too. He turned quickly. Come on. We need to move before they circle back. They walked fast. Weaving through the maze of narrow streets, Daniel's mind raced with possibilities. He didn't know if he was saving her or dragging himself into danger. But for now it didn't matter. At last they reached a quiet block on the edge of the city. Old buildings leaned against each other like tired giants. Daniel stopped before a rusted metal door. He pulled out a small card and slid it into the reader. The door buzzed weakly before opening with a groan. This is it, Daniel said. Stepping inside, Lyra hesitated, standing at the threshold. Her glowing eyes studied the shadows beyond the door. Her fear was clear, but so was her exhaustion. After a long pause, she stepped inside. The room was dim and cluttered. A small heater hummed weakly in the corner, casting a faint warmth. The furniture was old, the walls stained, but compared to the frozen streets, it was paradise. Lyra's breath shook as she looked around. She touched the heater gently as if the warmth itself was a miracle. For the first time that night, her shoulders relaxed just a little. Daniel closed the door behind them, locking it tight. You're safe here, he said quietly. No one will bother you, but even as he spoke, a sudden sound echoed from outside. A heavy knock against the metal door, sharp and deliberate. Lyra's eyes widened in terror. Daniel froze. His heart thudded in his chest. The hunters had found them. The knock against the metal door echoed again, slow, heavy, like the sound of someone who already knew there was no escape. Lyra froze in the middle of the small room, her glowing eyes wide with terror. Daniel's hand moved quickly to the lock. Pressing it tighter, his jaw clenched for a long moment. They both stood in silence. The heater hummed, the wind outside howled, and then silence. Whoever was outside had gone, or at least pretended to leave. But Daniel knew this city too well. Predators didn't give up so easily. Lyra backed away from the door. Pressing herself against the wall, her small frame trembled. They're here, she whispered. They'll never stop. They want me alive. Daniel turned to her, his eyes narrowing. Why? He asked firmly. Why would men follow a child through the streets? Why are you worth chasing? Lyra shook her head, tears gathering but refusing to fall. You wouldn't understand, she said weakly. No one ever does. Daniel stepped closer, his voice softer now. Then help me understand. If I'm risking my life by keeping you here, I deserve to know the truth. Lyra's lips trembled. For a moment, she looked as if she would stay silent forever, but then she slowly reached into her cloak. Her fingers pulled out a small metallic shard no bigger than a coin. It glowed faintly, alive with strange energy. Daniel frowned. "What is that?" Lyra clutched it tightly. "It belonged to my family," she said quietly, "before they were destroyed." Her words hung heavy in the air. Daniel blinked. "Destroyed?" Lyra nodded, her voice breaking. "We were part of a house, one of the noble lines of my people. We lived in the higher districts, with light and music, with safety and warmth. But someone betrayed us. Soldiers came, fire fell from the sky, and everything was gone. I survived only because my mother pushed me into the escape pod. She told me to run, to hide, to never let this shard fall into the wrong hands." Daniel stared at her. He hadn't expected such a story, not from a girl who looked so fragile. "And those men outside, they work for the ones who burned my family," she whispered, clutching the shard tighter. "They know if they get this, they get what my family died protecting. They'll chase me across worlds for it." Daniel felt a chill, not from the cold but from the weight of her words. He realized she wasn't just a lost child begging for shelter. She carried a secret, something worth killing for, something powerful. "Why tell me this?" Daniel asked slowly. Lyra looked at him with broken eyes. "Because you didn't walk away," she said. "Everyone else turns their face, everyone else pretends I don't exist. But you looked at me. You listened even when I only had 2 credits. You didn't laugh, you didn't steal from me. You stayed." Daniel's throat tightened. He didn't know what to say. He wasn't a hero, he wasn't a soldier. He was just a tired human trying to survive another night. Yet somehow fate had placed this girl and her secret in his hands. Lyra sat down near the heater, curling up like a wounded bird. Her eyes stared into the weak flame. "I don't know how much longer I can run," she whispered. "Every night they find me. Every night I wonder if it will be the last." Daniel lowered himself onto the chair across from her. His mind was a storm. He could still throw her out, still pretend none of this was real, but the thought made his chest ache. He knew that if he let her go, he would hear her voice forever in his mind. "Please. Human, I only have 2 credits. Outside." The city groaned with life. Engines roared in the distance. Laughter echoed from strangers who knew nothing of the hunted child in Daniel's room. He leaned forward, his voice calm but sharp. "Listen, if they want you alive, then you have a chance. We just need to stay one step ahead." Lyra's eyes flicked up to him. "You mean, you'll help me?" Daniel hesitated. The weight of the choice pressed hard. His life had been simple, quiet. He wanted nothing more than to stay invisible. But now invisible wasn't an option. "Not anymore." Finally he nodded. "I'll help," he said. "But you have to trust me completely." Lyra stared at him for a long moment, then slowly nodded. For the first time, her lips curved into something faintly resembling a smile. Fragile but real. The warmth of the heater wrapped around them, yet the air was thick with tension. Both knew the hunters would return. Both knew safety was an illusion. But for the first time since her world burned, Lyra wasn't alone. Daniel leaned back, closing his tired eyes for a moment. Outside, a shadow passed across the window. A whisper of footsteps echoed in the alley. The hunters had not gone far. They were waiting, watching, and the night was only just beginning. The shadows outside grew thicker, pressing against the thin walls of Daniel's small home. The heater's weak hum could not drown out the sound of footsteps crunching against gravel. Daniel's eyes opened slowly, his instincts sharp. He had lived long enough in dangerous places to know when trouble was about to come through his door. Lyra sat curled by the heater, her small hand still gripping the glowing shard. Her eyes were wide, staring at the door as if she already knew what was about to happen. The first sound came suddenly, a sharp bang against the metal frame. Then another, louder, deliberate. The hunters had returned, and this time they would not leave. Daniel stood quickly, his heart pounding. He motioned for Lyra to stay quiet. She pressed a hand against her lips, her body trembling. A harsh voice shouted from outside. "We know she's in there, human. Open the door, and you'll walk away alive." Daniel's jaw clenched. He said nothing. Instead, he grabbed a metal pipe from behind the table. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. Another bang shook the door. Dust fell from the ceiling. Lyra flinched, clutching the shard tighter. "They'll break it," she whispered, fear in her voice. "They always break in." Daniel looked at her. his eyes steady. "Not tonight," he said firmly. The lock rattled violently, then snapped. The door slammed open. 3 men stepped inside, their eyes dark, their clothes marked with the symbols of a criminal guild. The leader, tall with a scar across his cheek, grinned when he saw Lyra. "There you are," he sneered. "Running only makes the hunt sweeter." Lyra backed against the wall. Her breathing shallow, Daniel stepped in front of her. Gripping the pipe tightly, his voice was low, dangerous. "She's not going anywhere," the men laughed. "You think you can stop us, human? Move aside, she's worth more than your life." But Daniel didn't move. His body blocked their view of Lyra, his stance steady. The leader's grin faded into irritation. He waved his hand, and the other 2 men stepped forward. The first rushed Daniel, swinging a knife. Daniel sidestepped, slamming the pipe hard into the man's arm. The knife clattered to the floor. The man howled in pain, stumbling back. The second lunged at him, but Daniel pushed the table into his path. The man tripped, crashing into the chair. Daniel swung again, striking his shoulder. The leader's eyes narrowed, his voice was sharp. "Enough games." He pulled out a small blaster, its red glow filling the room. Lyra gasped. Daniel froze for a second. His weapon was no match against a blaster. The leader smirked, pointing it directly at Daniel's chest. "Step aside," he ordered, "or I'll burn you down where you stand." Lyra's heart pounded. She knew what the leader wanted, her shard, her life, everything her family died to protect. She looked at Daniel, sweat glistening on his face. But his eyes were steady. He didn't move, he didn't back down. Daniel's voice was cold. "You'll have to go through me," the leader growled, his finger tightening on the trigger. But before he could fire, Lyra shouted, "Stop!" Her small voice cracked like lightning in the tense room. The men turned to her, their eyes narrowed. The leader sneered. "So you finally speak, little heir. Hand it over. And maybe I'll let him live." Lyra held up the shard. Its faint glow grew brighter, pulsing like a heartbeat. "You'll never have it," she whispered. "It's not yours." The leader laughed cruelly. "You think you can stop me with that toy?" But then something strange happened. The shard shimmered, and the air around it vibrated with energy. A faint hum filled the room. The hunters stepped back, their eyes flickering with unease. Daniel glanced at Lyra, his breath catching. The shard wasn't just a piece of metal, it was alive. Powerful. Lyra's hands shook, but she didn't lower it. Her voice trembled but carried strength. "Leave us, or this shard will remember you." The hunters exchanged uneasy glances, the leader's grin faltered. But pride kept him rooted. "Bluff!" he spat. Though his hand shook slightly on the blaster, Daniel seized the moment with a burst of strength. He swung the pipe against the leader's hand. The blaster flew across the floor. Daniel kicked it away quickly. The fight exploded again, fists, shouts, and the sound of metal striking flesh filled the room. Lyra crouched low, holding the shard close. She watched as Daniel fought like a man with nothing to lose. Every swing, every step meant to shield her. The hunters underestimated him, they thought him weak. But Daniel's will was forged in hardship. In nights just as cold as this one, finally the leader stumbled. Blood on his lip, his men dragged him back. "This isn't over," he snarled, spitting on the floor. "We'll take her, and when we do, not even your corpse will be left behind." With that, they retreated into the night, their threats hanging heavy in the air. The door slammed shut behind them. Daniel dropped the pipe, his chest heaving. Sweat dripped from his brow. He turned to Lyra, who still clutched the glowing shard, her eyes wide, filled with both fear and awe. You stood against them," she whispered. Disbelief in her voice, Daniel sank onto the chair, exhausted, his voice rough. "I wasn't going to let them take you." Lyra's eyes softened. For the first time since she met him, she felt something strange, something warm. It was trust, fragile but growing. Outside, the city breathed with silence, but Daniel knew it wouldn't last. The hunters would return, stronger, angrier, and when they did, he and Lyra would have to be ready. The night was far from over, and their battle had only just begun. The room was quiet again, but the silence was heavy. The broken chair lay on its side, the floor was scattered with dust, and the air still carried the smell of sweat and fear. Daniel sat slumped against the wall, his chest rising and falling in slow, heavy breaths. Lyra knelt near him, her glowing eyes filled with worry. "You're hurt," she whispered, reaching for his arm. A cut ran across his sleeve where the knife had grazed him. Daniel waved it off. It's nothing, he muttered, though his body ached from every blow he had taken. His eyes drifted to the shard in her hand, still glowing faintly. That thing, it's dangerous. Lyra shook her head. It's not dangerous, she said softly. It's memory. It holds the last of my house, the last of my family. Without it, I'd be nothing, her voice cracked. Daniel studied her closely, for the first time. He saw not just a frightened girl, but the weight of someone who carried an entire legacy alone. You don't have to carry it by yourself, Daniel said quietly. Lyra blinked, confusion in her eyes. Why would you say that? You don't even know me. Daniel looked down, his voice was rough. Because I once carried something alone too, and I lost it. Lyra tilted her head, her curiosity breaking through her fear. What was it? Daniel's eyes grew distant. My sister, he said after a pause. She was younger than me. Fragile, always sick, I tried to protect her. Tried to keep her safe, but the world didn't care. She slipped away one night while I was out searching for medicine. I came back to an empty bed. His voice broke slightly. Though he fought to keep it steady, Lyra's lips parted. She could feel the ache in his words, more real than any scar. I'm sorry, she whispered. Daniel forced a small smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. I promised myself that if I ever had the chance to protect someone again, I wouldn't fail. He looked at her, his gaze steady. That's why I can't leave you to them. Lyra's chest tightened. No one had ever spoken like that to her. Not since her mother. Her glowing eyes softened. And you don't even want my credits, she murmured. Daniel chuckled dryly. 2 credits won't buy me much anyway. For the first time. Lyra smiled, a faint curve of her lips fragile but genuine. It lit her face in a way Daniel hadn't seen before. Like a spark of life fighting back against the dark. They sat in silence for a while. The heater's weak hum filling the room. Outside, the city moved on as if nothing had happened. But inside the small shelter, something shifted. Lyra uncurled slowly, sitting across from Daniel. She placed the shard on the table between them. Its glow pulsed softly like a heartbeat. My mother said this shard holds more than memory, she whispered. She said one day, it will guide me to people I can trust, maybe. Maybe it brought me to you. Daniel looked at the shard, then back at Lyra. His voice was steady. Maybe it did. Her eyes shimmered. She leaned closer, her voice trembling. Do you think humans can really care for someone like me? Daniel's heart twisted. I don't just think it, he said firmly. I know it, we're stubborn, reckless, and sometimes cruel, but when we choose to protect someone, we don't let go. Lyra's hands tightened around the edge of her cloak. Then why do I feel like I can breathe again? Daniel didn't answer. He just sat there watching her shoulders relax for the first time since he found her. The bond was growing, fragile but undeniable. The night stretched on and exhaustion pulled at them both. Lyra finally curled near the heater, her head resting on her arms. Daniel watched as her breathing slowed. She looked peaceful, almost like any other child asleep after a long day. He leaned back, his eyes heavy, but he stayed awake. His mind ran in circles. The hunters would return. Stronger, better prepared, he would need a plan. He would need courage, but for now, he let himself look at the sleeping girl and feel something he hadn't in years. Purpose. Hours passed, the heater flickered, and Daniel's eyes finally closed for a moment. In that silence, Lyra stirred in her sleep, whispering words too soft to hear. But Daniel caught one thing. Just before drifting off, family, she murmured, as if the word itself gave her comfort. Daniel's chest tightened, he whispered into the dark. Yes, family, outside. The city roared with life again, dawn approaching, but within the small shelter a fragile bond had been forged, one that neither hunters nor shadows could easily break. The first rays of dawn painted the alien city in pale gold, but the light did little to warm the cold streets. The world outside Daniel's small home was restless, filled with voices, engines, and whispers of danger. Inside, the heater had almost burned out. Its hum weaker than before, Lyra stirred awake, her glowing eyes blinking in the dim light. Daniel sat near the door. Pipe resting at his side, he had not slept much. His mind was heavy with thoughts of what was coming. The hunters would not give up, they would return, and when they did, there would be no running left. Lyra sat up slowly. Her cloak falling from her shoulders, she rubbed her eyes, then looked at him. You stayed awake all night, she whispered. Daniel shrugged, his voice calm. Somebody had to watch over you. Her lips trembled into a small smile. fragile but real. For a moment she looked almost like a child again, not a fugitive carrying the weight of her family's destruction. A knock echoed faintly outside, not the heavy fist of hunters, but softer, deliberate. Daniel tensed. His hand gripping the pipe, he motioned for Lyra to stay back. The knock came again, followed by silence. Daniel opened the door carefully. His eyes scanned the alley, empty. But at the far end, shadows moved quickly out of sight. It was a warning, a reminder that they were still being watched. He shut the door with a deep breath. "They're close," he muttered. Lyra clutched the shard, her voice quiet. "They'll never stop, will they?" Daniel met her eyes, his own steady. "Maybe not. But that doesn't mean we stop either." The hours dragged on. Every sound outside felt sharper. Every echo carried threat. By noon, Daniel knew they could no longer wait for an attack in his small home. They had to face the danger head on. "We'll go to the square," he told Lyra. "Out in the open. They'll come for you there, but this time, we'll be ready." Lyra's eyes widened. "The square? That's suicide." Daniel shook his head. "It's a chance if they want you alive. They won't kill us outright, we can use that." She hesitated, fear flickering in her glowing eyes. But then she saw the resolve in his face. She nodded slowly. "If you'll stand with me, then I'll face them." By evening they reached the square. The marketplace was nearly empty, stalls closing for the night. Daniel stood tall, pipe hidden under his coat. Lyra stood beside him, clutching the shard that glowed faintly under her cloak. It didn't take long. The hunters appeared from the alleys. More than before, their leader stood at the front, his scarred face twisted in a cruel grin. "You've caused us too much trouble, human," he spat. "Hand her over, and maybe you'll live." Daniel stepped forward, his voice strong. "No." The word echoed across the square, simple yet powerful. Lyra felt it ripple through her chest. The leader snarled, "Do you even know what she carries?" "That shard could buy you more than you'll earn in 10 lifetimes. Daniel shook his head. "She's not for sale. She's not your prize. She's a child who deserves to live free. And if I have to bleed to make that happen, I will." The hunters laughed cruelly, but there was unease in their eyes. Humans weren't supposed to defy them like this. Not for someone who wasn't even their kind. The leader raised his hand. "Then you'll die together," he growled. But before they could strike, Lyra stepped forward. Her small voice rang across the square. "No, we will not die today." She pulled the shard from her cloak. Its glow burst brighter than ever before. The air hummed. A wave of energy rippled across the square. The hunters staggered back in shock. The shard floated in Lyra's hands, its heartbeat strong, alive. "This is the memory of my house," she declared, her voice trembling but firm. "It remembers justice, it remembers honor, and it will not let murderers claim it." The glow spread across the ground. The hunters cursed, stumbling back. Some fled into the alleys, their courage broken. Only the leader remained, his face pale with rage. He rushed forward. But Daniel stepped in his way, pipe raised. In that moment, human strength and alien memory stood together. The fight was quick. Rage met resolve. And resolve won. The leader fell, groaning in pain, and crawled away into the shadows. Silence fell over the square. Only the shard's soft glow remained. Lyra turned to Daniel, her eyes filled with tears. "You didn't let them take me," she whispered. "You stood when no one else would." Daniel dropped the pipe. Breathing heavily, he looked at her with tired but steady eyes. "I told you, if I choose to protect someone, I don't let go." Lyra's tears slipped down her cheeks. She held the shard close to her chest, then looked at him with a trembling smile. "I only had 2 credits, she said softly. "But you gave me a home." Daniel's lips curved into a faint smile. He placed a hand on her shoulder, steady and warm. "You don't need credits anymore," he said gently. "You're family now." The words sank into her heart, deeper than any promise she had ever heard. She leaned against him, her small frame trembling not from fear, but from relief. The shard's glow softened. As if it too had found peace together, they turned away from the square, leaving the hunters behind. The city stretched before them, dangerous and cold, but no longer empty. For the first time since her world burned, Lyra was not alone. And for the first time since his sister's death, Daniel was not lost. They walked together into the night, bound not by blood, but by something stronger, choice, trust, and the unyielding spirit of humanity.